find a seat. We'll get started here now. Welcome to this event. I'm from Hitech Advisors, and it's great to see you all for CTO Team Meets AI. Today is all about connection, sharing, and learning, and I'm glad that we all get to be a part of it. Now, I want to assure you this event is being run by humans, but if it goes too smoothly, maybe we'll let AI take some of the credit. And since we're talking about leadership, I was recently asked if CTOs will be replaced by AI, and I was like, no, that's not going to happen, but perhaps it's going to come and ask for your seat at the table. Now, I'll also like to introduce you to our new COO, Lan Wang. He has joined Hitech Advisors, and he'll introduce himself and also share about our company. Welcome, Lan.
Thank you, Ruchi. Thanks, everyone. So for those who I have not met, my name is Lan Wang, and I've joined Hitech Advisors, Haresh and the Hitech Advisor team in July of this year. And prior to joining, I spent decades in various different tech companies, different parts of the world. Had a lot of interesting stories to share, maybe after this event. So since Haresh started Hitech Advisors about 7-8 years ago, right? The company has gone through tremendous growth, acquired very impressive client list from Microsoft, Nintendo, F5, those large multinational global brands, all the way to, small startup, early stage startup, like Senior Life, which we'll get a chance to hear a little bit later on. So there's really actually a couple big things that drew me to Hitech Advisor. One, very important to me, is the people-centric company culture that Haresh and the team have built. Okay, so empathy and trust is very, very important to me. And the second thing that drew me here is actually the growth potential that I see in this consultancy. At current stage is relatively small, but has huge potential. I think even global reach. So what have we been doing since July? We've been very aggressively expanding our practice and competencies around customer experience, which was the topic from our last session, as well as AI, like every consulting company, every company is doing, right? So the reason I see that there's a huge potential, because every business that you go out, speak to, they are all talking about AI transformation. Okay, so this is the opportunity that I see. Not just for Hitech Advisor, but for any well-executed consulting company. Above and beyond that, on the technology front, we are also building aggressively business and management consulting, right? So working on strategies with founders and CEOs to help them not only survive, but thrive in the next wave of this AI transformation. So there are many, many things that are exciting and changing at Hitech Advisor, but at its core, I think what is not changing is its way of doing business. So you can see we're expert at engaging experts. So we do see ourselves as a market maker for expertise. So we find and solve meaningful problems and engage people who find them rewarding and engaging to solve. So that's it. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Next one, none of these events would be possible without the generous sponsorship from JP Morgan Chase. So David Kirkman, yeah.
I'll say a couple words. You guys probably know JP Morgan as a firm, but I want to piggyback.
Is it a startup?
Not a startup.
Oh, okay.
So, I work with a private bank. We've been around for 200 years. So not new, but we do work with startups. So we build an enormous ecosystem for the whole startup community, right? From startup banking on the business bank side, all the way, as those companies grow, you move to the commercial bank, and then we can IPO your companies. So that is a focus for the firm. I cover the founders of those companies, and I cover the funders of those companies. So think about venture capital funds, and then also the GPs of those funds. So that's my focus. But I just want to thank Haresh for bringing me on to these events. This is probably our 10th event now.
Yeah, it is.
And I'll make the joke again, if we just would all would have bought NVIDIA when we started talking about AI, we all probably wouldn't need to be here. But we didn't. Well, I didn't. Maybe some of you guys did. But I did want to introduce some colleagues because the room's getting bigger, more people are here. We have Gita right here. We have Trang right there, and we have Kartik right there as well. We can help not just if you're a founder, not just if you're looking to raise capital. We can help with mortgages. We can help with banking. We can help with trust and estate services, and we can help with investment management. So if you guys ever have any questions, please, I'm sure you guys have all business cards, hand them out. But what Lance said was really, I thought, special. We pride ourselves on service. Everyone can do investment management. Everyone can probably advise on mortgage, but we are a white glove service at JP Morgan. We care about clients first. And that's why this firm has been great to me. They've moved me from Japan to New York to here, and I love this firm. And we care about our clients first, and I think that's not always the case in this business. So thank you, Haresh. It's been great. Got a good run.
Thank you, David. We appreciate the sponsorship and
Yes,
support.
and drink up, please. I'm splitting the bill with all these bankers now, so it's easier.
So that's like what? Several $1,000s a credit card times 6.
Yeah,
That's
so
a
let's
lot
get
of
the high
drinks.
shelf liquor, please. What are we doing?
But thank you, David. Thanks, Lan and Ruchi. So I was the instigator for Hitech Advisors, and I guess in some ways these events. So I really appreciate all of you coming over now and in the past. We have a company that Hitech Advisors has been working with for I think close to 2 years, about the same time when we started the JP Morgan partnership. And they're in an interesting domain, and the founder is sitting next to David. So just before we get to the main part of the panel, I was going to ask Ash if you want to give us a quick update on Senior Life, what it does and where it's at, and maybe how we can help.
Sure. So first of all, I want to acknowledge Haresh. So when I landed, I lived for 12 years in Tokyo, like David did. So that's our connection, right? So when I landed from Tokyo, I didn't know anybody. And the first thing I was told by my classmate, if you need to know somebody, you just need to know one person, that's Haresh. So first I thought Haresh knows everybody. Then I found out everybody knows Haresh, So that was the first interaction for me with Haresh. But when we started talking about 2 of my companies, which I'll give you hopefully 1 minute description of SeniorLife.ai. But even my first company that I started in Tokyo, which is called LiveSmart, which is now the #2 smart home company in Japan. What I discovered about Haresh, and most people may not realize, he's a salesman, of course, but he is a really hardcore critical thinker. So that was pretty interesting to me, because when I talk to you, right? So I'm here to advertise SeniorLife.ai, of course, but I'm also an extension of Hitech Advisors to Japan. I've been there for 12 years. I may not look Japanese, but I'm probably half Japanese, as Japanese as it gets. I speak the language fluently, and a lot of people know me there. So that's the intro. But talking about our company, SeniorLife.ai, which Haresh is Haresh's company, and everybody now, Lan, and everybody else, it's a strategic partner to us. We do. We are a platform that takes health metrics and analyzes, or in our trained models, and helps seniors, the company Senior Life, stay independent. So basically, what do we do really? We look, we are in two domains. One is a risk of fall, and the other one is dementia, specifically Alzheimer's. So what happens is we take in video data. A video data could be somebody walking 20 seconds, or gaze data, gaze meaning like eye movement in case of Alzheimer's. And then those are functional parameters, right? We analyze that, and we have trained AI models. And then we add on top of that the physiological model. Physiological model is your comorbidities, your demographics, your age, and then all of that stuff, what medication you're taking. So for that part, for the first part, the mobility part is FDA certified, class 2 SAMD. For the second part, the physiology part, Mayo Clinic is a shareholder in the company, and we're training a model on their data that's going to be released next month. So what that's going to do is basically it's like a Q&A. From a Q&A, it can stratify the risk, right? And so first is take the functional parameters, take physiological data. That gives you a full picture, like a comprehensive picture, right? You can't miss out either, functional and physiological. And then what comes out is there some actionable insights, like you should do this, right? And then that obviously gets recommended by the doctor, and then gets referred by therapy and so on. So that's what we do. Why am I talking about it here right now? One, we are aggressively looking at recruiting customers, trial customers. We have a lot of licenses and so on, but we are looking to work with customers, potential customers, and of course, we're always raising money like any startup, right? So that's what it is.
Thank you. So if there's any interest. Thank you, Ash. It's probably going to cost me whatever he said. But we appreciate, the help from all of you, and Ash, we appreciate your partnership just like we do with JP Morgan. So I guess without further ado, we'll go into the meat of the discussion today. So as David mentioned, we've been at this for over 2 years. We've been looking at different domains and AI, the intersection of, right? So at Hitech Advisors, we have several practice areas, and one of the practice areas is engineering and product lifecycle. So alongside customer experience and IT operations and services. And so today we're going to talk about software engineering, product lifecycle, and AI, right? So about that, we have 3 of the most relevant experts from the domain on the panel here with me. I'm probably not going to be able to do justice to their achievements and accomplishments, so I'm going to ask them to maybe summarize those for us. The other thing I'm curious about as we do quick introductions is, maybe a new product or new service that you discovered within the last week that's, enabling you AI-wise. So, but we'll start with introductions. I'll pick somebody unless somebody wants to go first.
I could go.
Go ahead, Abhi. It's in the bottom. Hello.
Just one second here. Deal with this. Yeah, so I'm Abhi Sharma, CTO at Weave Communication. Responsibilities, of course, include strategy vision, but beyond that, it's also about defining the future of the company. And the domain we operate in today is patient engagement, communication. Think about medical facilities, clinics, dental, opto, vet, and others. Our software is used there for patient connections. Prior to that, I worked at Amazon, Microsoft, a bunch of other companies, mostly on AI domain, building software, which is on relevance ranking, pricing recommendation. So that's my experience in a nutshell. In terms of the application more recently, the one that comes to mind is on observability. I was talking to a startup which is trying to connect the dots from the logging, monitoring, alerting, all of that cool stuff in development, all the way to your code and identify the gaps in your code that exist to be able to say these kind of telemetry, these kind of changes in your code today can help you be more effective. And it does so by looking at your domain, so it's not just looking at random code, but if you're in healthcare, HIPAA compliance matters. We do payments as well, so PCI compliance and so on. Being able to layer in that kind of verticalized specialization into the solution is what made it unique for me.
Thank you.
Guess I'll go next. Hi, I'm Sky Nite. Yes, that's my real name from birth. And I am the CTO of a company called LavenirAI. We do negotiation training for procurement professionals. We're kind of in that post-series, seed, pre-series A realm, so about 10 people. And I'm, as a CTO, kind of everywhere, got to figure out long-term road mapping, which we've been doing lately for the raise, but then also day-to-day programming management and programming sometimes with my hands getting dirty as well. In terms of tooling, before that I was a CTO for a smaller company that was doing a social networking company, play in the VR kind of space. So if anyone's familiar with VR chat, we were a VR chat for more business use case. So that was kind of before that, and then programmer background. In terms of tooling, one thing that I thought was pretty interesting is we got hit up by this company that's trying to automate as much as possible the SOC 2 compliance process. And so to be able to identify, for those not familiar, SOC 2 is essentially kind of one of the big standard security certs that you can get to get into enterprises. That was one of the big learnings with this company, is that if you try to move in an enterprise environment, it's very difficult to get approved and go through that sales process. So we've done a lot of work on our own end to do that, but we don't have SOC 2 compliance. So that's something we've been exploring. I'm a little skeptical about whether it's going to work or not, but it's definitely something we're trying out.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Roger Barget. I think the one constant throughout my entire career has been machine learning. As a young kid, I worked at a national lab and actually deployed neural networks up on the space station for detecting micrometeorite leaks down in wells in Iran, back when they used to be our friends, to actually monitor for treaty verification for nuclear testing. At another point in my career, I showed Satya Nadella a demo of a cloud service for machine learning, and that became Azure ML, the first cloud service for machine learning. Today, I'm Senior Vice President at Oracle, responsible for our AI ML services. I think one of the most recent things that excited me and that we're applying is that we have several hundred cloud services in several hundred regions around the world and going even faster. There's no way our on-call engineers can actually keep up with the operational load. Getting paged at 2 in the morning is not fun for a young engineer. So we're building AI agents to actually do DevOps, to actually identify the root cause, to be able to read our run books that we've written on how to handle the issue, and actually automatically mitigate the issue through agents, which will have a huge impact on our company and how we scale as a company. So very excited about how that project is trending and what it might deliver for our company. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you for great introductions. I guess I'll start with a slightly doom and gloom topic as our first real question. So there's a lot of discussion in the industry and probably at the board level around the impact of AI on workforces, right? And I think marketing is one domain, but engineering is probably a domain that's changing perhaps the most rapidly as a result of AI, right? So a twofold question: should engineers be worried? The second is, I suspect most of you will, all of you will probably say no, but how do we retool ourselves, right? So Roger, since you were last time, go first this time.
Sure. I think the state of the world today. So first off, last year at Oracle Cloud World, which is now Oracle AI World, which kind of shows the impact AI is having on the company, we announced something called Code Assist, which we thought we were going to GA. Code Assist would be a tool that will allow developers to build code just through natural language prompts. And we looked at our company. I took a look at how many developers I have in the company and how much time we spend developing, writing unit tests, how low the unit test coverage is. I actually repivoted that project to focus all on our internal businesses. Yes, we're probably going to GA it at Oracle AI World later this year, but we spent the last year actually retooling it to focus on making our developers more productive. We haven't lost a single developer, but our unit test coverage because of this tool has gone from less than 20% almost to 100%. We have migrated old legacy code bases from old legacy languages to modern languages. We've actually had device drivers that we couldn't remember who wrote it, but we had a spec, we used the spec and converted that to modern language code. So we have not seen near-term impact. I don't think the tools are there to displace the workforce. They augment what our developers can do. We've seen productivity go up, lines of code go up, and other areas. Young developers. I mean, I remember when I first started working at Microsoft on SQL Server, I thought I knew what a buffer manager was until I looked at real production code, and it's actually overwhelming how many pages of code for all the edge cases. But we can use Code Assistant. Young developers can ask questions like, explain this code to me. What does this module do for me? And it can give natural language explanations, which you can imagine as a young developer, first year in the job. Now all of a sudden you have a buddy who can explain stuff and you can ask the embarrassing questions. So I guess what I'm saying is we're seeing productivity gains, and there's no shortage of stuff we want to do. And so we're actually getting more done with the engineers that we have. Again, test coverage, more productivity, higher quality code. We're migrating code at legacies. So I don't see that changing anytime soon. Just the backlog of stuff we have to do ain't going away, and the features we want to build ain't going away. So I don't see that impacting in the near term. We can talk later about what we might see in the longer term, but again, I see no near term, but I am seeing productivity gains across the board.
I have so many opinions and thoughts. Mostly, pretty much all of them agree with you, but there's a really good article I think that puts things in perspective. I believe it's called "The End of Programming as We Know It," and it's written by a very old and experienced programmer who's been through many of these cycles where new capability arrives. Suddenly, a lot more people can program more efficiently. We still have programmers, and so the type of work changes. We're no longer programming in assembly, thank goodness, but you know, there is still a lot of things to do. We're nowhere close to running out of software to write. And basically the argument that this author posits is that every time that we've seen this, because the cost of writing individual, like, you know, the actual amount of work you can do with this for the same cost goes up, the actual demand for software increases every single time. And I do think that we're going to see the exact same thing happen with AI, and we're kind of witnessing it right now. I think the market and news and coverage and things, there's a lot of kind of extremes on both ends. It's either going to end all programming or it's a complete bubble. The reality is it's somewhere in between the two, right? It's nuanced, and productivity gains are definitely happening. I think it's impossible to argue that AI programming is not extremely valuable. It's probably the fastest that a new tech has seen like roll out. In terms of just people adopting it because it's so impactful and changes your life like dramatically. So yeah, I mean, the short of it is that the type of work is going to change. What it means to be a programmer is going to change, but the work to program is going to be here for at least, you know, for now. And I think that there's also a lot of things to talk about with bottlenecking as well. Some arguments are being made right now that, like, yeah, the bottlenecking may not even be the actual writing of code. It may become defining what the code and architecture needs to be. It might be these other aspects of code. The actual writing of code maybe gets faster, but there's still a lot of other work outside of writing code. So yeah, I think we're, you know, gonna see a nuanced adoption. I don't think developers are getting let go en masse and it not hurting the companies. And that's the final point, is that the companies that do not need the software, like, yeah, maybe those companies don't actually need as many developers working on it. But any company that's in a competitive space, you need to keep your competitive advantage. And if you let developers go, then suddenly your competitors are not just going to have, you know, 10x the productivity because of AI, but they're actually going to have 100x the productivity because they also have 10 developers using AI. So that's another aspect to consider.
Excellent.
Yeah, agree with everything that's been said so far. Sometimes reading the articles, news, it may feel like, you know, it's kind of pulling the rug from under our feet. Isn't the case. Maybe it's also compounded by some of the news around, you know, layoffs or job impact. Not all of it is 100% tied to AI. There are a lot of other factors at play. If I look at just the industry we operate in today, development technology, narrow it down even to the domains of compliance, HIPAA, PCI. AI isn't even there where we 100% could trust the code it's producing. So we are heavily leveraging it when it comes to development of tests. We just talked about observability, for example. Code, particularly when it's greenfield services, it's helpful. It's useful in understanding legacy code, being able to parse it. But beyond that, you still need developers who understand the domain, the technology, the right architecture design. And those skill sets are even more valuable in this world because just writing basic code, yes, AI could help you with. But the experience, the knowledge, there's no substitute for that. And I would say, if anything, we're hiring more today, at least at our organization, our company, than we were prior to this, just noticing all the upside in the industry. The features, the functionalities we want to bring to our customers, we want to expedite that. And AI has enabled that for us. But to be able to tap onto it, we do need the talented developers out there. Also, we have to bear in mind, not every developer has to be building frontline models or training models even. It's about consumption of these models in your use cases. And upskilling for that, building that talent over time doesn't require a lot more than some natural sense of curiosity, some interest in learning new domain, new skills, and that's about it. So I'm a firm believer that almost all of our industry's developers who are committed to it will have a job. If anything, they will have a more productive, more fulfilling job in the future.
Wow, good. So I don't know if you are involved in discussing with like universities or colleges that are producing new engineers. So in light of the fact that you see there's a lot of work to be done, and the AI tools or tool sets are going to help, increase the productivity. But what can the universities do, or if I'm an existing engineer, like are your teams learning how to use these new tools on their own, or are you having any organized efforts, whether it's training or mentoring, coaching, something like that? Or is it just these are, as part of the bell curve, there's some people who seek out change and there are other people who, adopt eventually, right? So anything you're doing proactively? Go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, I'll take that to start with. Back when I was at Microsoft, we were getting Azure ML launched. We actually started something called Azure Machine Learning, where we actually started bringing and training our employees on how to use these tools. What were the basics of ML? We followed that up with machine learning for PMs to know what problems could be attacked with machine learning. That program still runs today, over a decade later. At Oracle, we're running the very same thing because you have to train your employees on how to use these. We have launched, say, a half a dozen ML services beyond just the Code Assist one that I mentioned to help our employees use AI for their jobs, and adoption was low. And so we actually have to have a program where we're doing training, we're tracking by organization who are using these tools and trying to ask ourselves, what do we have to do? What kind of training? What kind of coaching? What kind of examples do we have to share? So anybody who's thinking about employing these tools in their company, you honestly have to think about a program to raise awareness, understanding, find champions, give examples. We're releasing videos on how to use it. So it's a multifaceted way, but you have to upskill your workforce to use it. They're skilled, they're smart, they know their job, they know their domain. You don't want to let those people go, but this is a new tool and you can't really expect them to just get it right away. Surprisingly, even my machine learning engineers have the lowest percentage of usage of some of these tools. Talk about obstinate, but others actually see the value. So you have to have a program. That's all is the point.
I feel like, machine learning people move at a different pace from software developers generally. I think adoption is one of those things. We're a small startup. We have like a team of 5 developers. I think really, I think training, like you were saying, is key. I think if I could go back and find a good training thing that exists out there for it, that would be maybe more effective than just kind of everybody figuring it out themselves. But I think if you have the type of people who are curious, just getting them to go for it and heavily encouraging or in some cases requiring, as some startups are doing now, that your developers use the tool for some set period of time. Because the reality is you're in there day to day, you're doing your work. A lot of people are not sticking their head above ground, and it's exhausting to use a new tool. I mean, it feels like it would be exhausting. I feel like when I first opened the IDE that had AI agents built into it, suddenly everything felt easier immediately. So that was kind of that's probably why the adoption is so great, is that it is an immediate aha moment that your developers are not going to have unless they're kind of put into the situation that they actually have it. But yeah, I don't know too much about it beyond just training.
Yeah, very similar to that, but a structured approach helps. And there's just so many tools out there, a lot of them fragmented. Just throwing more tools at your developers or your organization at large doesn't necessarily help. Identifying the one you want to take on, be Copilot, Cursor, Klein, you name it, pick your poison. Ensuring you have right set of documentation, enablement material, sometimes even hands-on sessions that allow them to learn through that journey. It has to be repeatable. You don't do it once and forget. Gradually expanding the footprint, and then measuring the success. What does it mean for you? It shouldn't just be that, you know what, someone completed a training. How are they applying day to day in their job? If it is code generation, how much of it? If it is code coverage, how you're progressing through that journey. If you do those three things, you'll get to a stage where you'll find you're making progress, and then you learn from it and rinse and repeat.
Can I add one more thing I just remembered? Pair programming and showing, like, as whoever the pioneers of the AI tooling coding side of your company are, having those people pair up with people who are maybe not as familiar and having them walk them through like how they would go through either writing some code and then like reviewing it. I think that as a process is super, super valuable and is also very easy to do.
I guess there's, maybe this is a very elementary question, but we get this from some of the clients where we're doing engineering work for them. They're looking for help on frameworks or tools to enable them to protect their IP and proprietary data while they're using a whole bunch of these tool sets, right? And so it seems scary to have your IP potentially leak out, right, in some way, shape, or form. So I guess I'm curious for each of you how your organizations basically create the guardrails to do this safely.
I'll jump in. That's a very good question. Model routing. First off, if you're asking a general purpose programming question or coding question, we will route that prompt up to a model such as OpenAI or any other one. Again, we're changing every 6 months. You have to benchmark the heck out of these things. It's a race. They get better for different languages, so we have to always constantly benchmark and see which one is best. But we actually do prompt routing. We realize that question is a general purpose. But if you're asking a question about one of our code bases, we've built small language models using open weights models that are fine-tuned on that language. You can actually do code reviews, design reviews, and even ask questions about that code base. That goes to a small language model that we've built and hosted on our infrastructure to make sure that nothing goes up and out to the cloud. That being said, that is a big concern for we had to convince a lot of teams that we really had this right before they would actually let their engineers use it. So we had to actually go have heart-to-heart conversations with the EVPs for the various database groups and others to prove that we would not let their database code go up to the cloud and be off on somewhere else. But it is a concern, but there are mechanisms you can use to plan a route that or protect.
I'm gonna like semi-flip the question because I think internally, we're just using the APIs like OpenAI, well, through Azure, because the OpenAI API is not something you should use raw, is my opinion. More on that later after. What I would say is our customers are extremely concerned. We work in enterprises, and so if you're a utility company, which are some of our customers, they do not want that being sent to just some speech model server somewhere, and then they're negotiating, right? So they don't want their upcoming negotiation speech on those servers. So we had to figure out early on kind of how do we navigate this so that we can actually sell to these enterprises and they'll trust us. So our solution was we actually ended up getting a licensing deal with kind of one of the top speech models, which is DeepSeek. DeepSeek, yeah. I have to not use DeepGram because that's the Chinese one, and that got us flagged by some IT security stuff, and we don't use them. But DeepSeek, basically we figure out how to get our own kind of cloud-hosted version of these models, and then even though it's not our proprietary software, the actual routing of the information is purely through our cloud services. And so if we're, if our own cloud, cert stuff is good, then those companies can trust that we are not going to leak their data.
Yeah, almost all of what has been said so far. We're not as large as Oracle to be able to build our own version of models that handle developer queries. But what we have done internally is we deploy our own version of MCP servers, locally hosted. We have gatings on top, which measures how it is getting used, along with that every single query is analyzed over time. And then I would say, no matter the size of your organization, you will find ways where these models are enabling you with the parameters to be able to say, don't use my data for training, and leverage that. And if there is a model that doesn't do that, there's always a substitute for it somewhere. So no matter the size of organization, you should be able to limit exposure of your IP and your customer data. At least, that's what we have seen so far in the versions we have used.
Thank you. Who decides, who certifies that this particular approach to leverage AI tools is safe? Is it in the CISO's realm, or who decides?
Yeah, it's a question I don't think that is consistently answered at every organization. At we didn't have a solid process defined, so each head of department, organization was kind of making their own call. Yes, there was a procurement process, which was months long and doesn't even index heavily on understanding of how data was going to use. Primarily, it was more around ensuring we have the checks of security, privacy, right pricing policies, and whatnot. Very recently, we have established what we call AI and Data Governance Council at Weave. It has a representation from, of course, CISO's organization, but development, legal, a few other disciplines combined. And the goal there is to let's bring the knowledge and experience from all these domains to be able to make the right decision on what tooling, based on our cost, based on the quality that we expect, the level of comfort we have on exposure of our own IP, and the legal approvals we have from our customers and usage of their data is considered when any of this data is exposed. So that's what we've been working through so far. It's early stage. We'll see how it plays out, but that's our take on it.
I guess when something big happens, right, we'll see
Yeah,
who is held accountable or
and we'll
held
remain
most
adaptable
accountable.
through it. Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think the process is the same as for any third-party dependency, at least for a smaller company, where you look at, what are you relying on from this company? And so I think in our case, it's a conversation between me, the CTO, and legal, looking at the privacy policies of the third party and just deciding, like, is this A, something our customers are going to accept, and B, is this something that we internally can accept? I think at a smaller startup, you care less about your own privacy in a lot of cases, but the customer's privacy is like extremely important. So yeah, I think just that getting legal involved is always a slowing down process. So I think like we tend to try not to bring in too many third parties unless they're absolutely necessary. But yeah, that's kind of our approach.
Go ahead.
Great. Yeah, I'll add two things. We put two mechanisms in place, and we tried to get one out of the way. The first one is we did responsible AI review. Every service has to go through a responsible AI review. Simple questions you're asking: where did the data come from that you're training the model? Is there any bias in the outputs of the model? And ML models don't have bias, but they have skews in the air because of the data you use, so we make sure that we don't have any kind of bias. That is reviewed when the project is first proposed, where are we getting the data? Are we getting good samples? We actually do an evaluation before a model goes in production. That was one thing we added. Step two, to keep the corporate people happy, we've got guardrails on everything. Guardrails on the data that can go into the model and what the model comes back out with. And we let corporate compliance manage what goes into the guardrails. It's a system. They're rules. They can add all they want. But you've got to also get legal the hell out of the way, because corporates move slow. AI is moving so fast. New stuff is coming out so fast. You want to get it out in a month, a week. to actually make your company agile. So we literally had to change the review processes by which we can streamline getting AI into the hands of our people to make it productive. And that has been a company change that's had to come all the way down from our CEO down. So again, once you've convinced them that you've got the right mechanisms in place to protect the employees, protect what data is going, and that they have controls and knobs they can turn on, the form of guardrails they can add on both, then you can say, actually, we can streamline the legal reviews. Let's get this out next week. Otherwise, we'd be waiting months to go through legal reviews.
I think that's a really good idea to have the like safety guardrails that are controllable by the people who that's their job is to make sure that stuff doesn't go out, and that's deployed across like all your uses for AI. Wow, that's really cool.
Thank you. I guess this is new, so we'll probably all learn as different risks materialize over time, I'm guessing. I have, I guess, a couple more questions. And then, by the way, you'll all get a chance to ask questions pretty soon. So obviously, AI is affecting and enabling engineering mostly for positive reasons, right? And it's increasing productivity, et cetera. So there's a little bit of a disconnect, right? Sometimes in the media, we're hearing that, where's the beef? We're not seeing the ROI on AI. But all the information you've shared is that pretty much everything your teams do is very, very different now as a result of AI, and there's significant productivity increases. So I know it's a little bit of a broader question, not just about technology or engineering, but why is it slower to observe the effects or positive effects of AI investments, do you think?
I can speak to that a little bit. I think there's three things I kind of think about. One is there's like the gut check personal level, right? Where I know for a fact that I'm able to take a day now, a week to program, which is very hard to eke out when you're managing people too, and get entire either features done or like proof of concepts done. And that is working across like 3 different languages, one of which I'm not that familiar with. And that would definitely not be possible without AI. So I think that aspect of it, from like a, what is the word I'm looking for? Like from a personal level, it seems obvious that there's an improvement there. I think that one of the things that came out where there was this like MIT study or something that I did some digging into that basically was saying that, productivity was like not happening or it was negative or something like that. And, there's another study I think that I saw that was done by, I think, GitHub, or maybe it was done on a lot of GitHub repos where they saw like a 15% improvement in productivity. And it's really hard to look at these and cut through the noise of like, what is the actual reality? Because every development situation is very unique and different. And the way that you run a study like this matters a lot because it's just something that it's so hard to compare one-to-one. Like, how do you tell somebody who's more productive? You can't use lines of code. That's a horrible metric. Like absolutely awful. You can't like outside of that, like what do you use though? Like commits? No, like there's no like easy way to quantify this stuff. And so I think that there's a mixture of like studies that are either bad or just like trying to quantify things in ways that maybe aren't working out, or small sample sizes, which the MIT study was. And then you've got other situations where, if you're looking for like a long-term like ROI, monetary number side, that's also very difficult and takes time. And AI is so new that I think it's really only moved into enterprises in any meaningful way in the last like 8 months, I would say. I mean, it's obviously been happening, but it's been a slow adoption curve relative to how quickly we in the AI space are moving to do things. I don't know. Like things have to move from pilot to full deployment, and I think what's happening right now is a lot of pilots are happening, but they're not necessarily moving to full production. And then those that are, it's like they're moving to production maybe in 2 months. So yeah, I think it's hard to say.
Yeah, I'll just build on that in the sense that it's very easy for people to have ideas about how to apply ML. There's very few projects that are well suited for having ML. There's many moving parts that have to come together. All ML is based on data. You have to have a data strategy in place. There's a number of things that have to come together. I don't want to try to go into all of that, but getting that judgment and that understanding of what makes a good ML product or opportunity. Your first line of defense is good product managers that understand ML, that can actually check all the boxes to see if all the ducks are lined up in a row. And then second, there's an acceptance issue. Are you giving something which is going to displace somebody, or it's going to be a pain, annoyance to them? I mean, think Clippy back in Microsoft days when Clippy was trying to pop up and tell you what, right? But you've got, so you have to really think about the user experience. Are you really complementing what they're doing? So now all of a sudden we've gone from thousands of ideas that execs might have, winnowed it down to 100 that might actually be viable ML products, and now maybe 10 that might actually work that somebody wants to use. And then maybe, hopefully, you get the user experience right, so people, it's a delight to use, not an annoyance to use. So the potential for failure is fraught. There's a lot of opportunities to fail, so it's actually very few actually make it through all the way to success. It's a challenge.
Yeah, completely agree with everything that has been said. We often hear these models, and a new generation of that is launched, and it does a better job at certain types of prompts. But that's just a prompt and a response to it. If you want to see an impact from it, that has to be built into a product. It has to go through its own maturity curve, and you have to be mindful of the enablement and education of developers through that journey. So even if that adoption happens, that takes time at scale. So you're not seeing the impact that probably is expected overnight. It's going to be a slow progress. Having said that, the products that stick, that do really well, you will see the valuation of those organizations, you will see the expansion of their usage, their customer base is real. And we've seen that some firsthand in our world as well. Simple things like call intel, for example, overnight becoming multi-million product for us. So lots of opportunities ahead. I think we need to give it a little more time. We can measure it on dev productivity, like feature velocity or quality of code here and there, which we do. And you see meaningful but minor improvements to that. I think we need to wait for the time where many of these products that are being built mature, have wider adoption, then we'll be able to accurately measure the impact of AI in our daily lives.
I see. I guess my perspective or question I have is, if we were to ask people what is the productivity effect of the internet, right? I don't think we can separate it out today from life. And maybe AI adoption has been so fast in some ways that you can't separate it out from everything anymore, even though it's relatively newer, right? You touched on something, Roger, which was one of my questions that I had noted down I wanted to ask everybody. So engineering, it's about building things that usually somebody decides need to be built, right? So what about that part of the equation in the CTO's arsenal, right? What products to build? So have your teams, or what is the experience of the teams in helping figure out what should be our product set, right? Using AI tools, not just building the features and the products that we decide to build, leveraging AI technologies, right, in engineering. Does it make sense? No. Okay. Let me put it in ChatGPT, it'll fix it.
Are you asking how we use AI? How we use AI to decide what to build and brainstorm what to build?
Exactly, right. So how is in your organizations, how are AI tools helping you decide what mix of products and solutions and features to build?
Yeah, let me take a stab at it. So I don't think AI decides for us what to build today, but it helps us decide is more like it. A simple example is when we want to conduct experiments today, analyzing that data is so much easier. Being able to run A/B tests, it hasn't changed. I mean, it's simple science, right? But beyond that, being able to run multiple of these, make sense of it across experiments, it's so much easier. When it comes to defining specs, for example, design UX, any of that, AI plays a role into it. Architectural design is integral to it. So all of that feedbacks to in a better product that has a stronger market fit, better quality, lower incidents, all of that. But I don't think necessarily decisioning, at least in our organization today, is driven by AI. It's augmented by AI.
Yeah, I mean, I think AI brainstorming is a useful technique of brainstorming and analysis as well. It's not going to make the decision for you. I mean, that's the same as rolling a die and having that decide your decision for the most part. Actually, interesting use case is, so I'm publishing a book this month on AI called Expert in Everything. how to keep your job and thrive in the age of AI. And so as part of writing that book, I did use AI to help kind of almost like skeleton out chapters. So I'd prompt like, this is the topic of the book, this is the chapter title, like, here's an outline of the chapter, now like write me a chapter, and so it'd give me this feedback of like, okay, here's what its attempt at a chapter is. Now, the quality of that compared to my own internal quality of what I expect from a book that I'm reading was not even close. So I went through and basically I treated almost like a bare bones like outline, like an enhanced outline essentially, to then go through and write. And so I think similarly with like feature development or anything like that, like you can do those type of techniques where you have like, okay, this is what I'm thinking about doing, here's the info, what are some things I should consider for whether this is a good idea. And then, you'll get an output, but at the end of the day, it's up to you as the human to decide whether the output is, full of it or not, and make a decision. It was not very helpful for me, as hard as I tried to decide on the title of the book. There's lots of attempts, but none of them actually fit what I, thought was a good idea. So, yeah, I think humans still have a lot of work to do in that realm, and maybe engineers making the AI better at that type of activity.
Cool. I think in every project that's succeeded in my company, AI hasn't proposed how it could be used. It's been the case where somebody who understands the business problem, they understand their domain, and they get familiar with the technology. Something that we've tried to do is actually we've started socializing successful AI projects so that people will connect the dots saying, that looks like a problem I have in my business. It looks like this would work for me. I mean, we have a case where support is a big deal for our business, supporting our customers with their products. We spend billions of dollars on support. Often, we did an analysis. The person who owns the support business did an analysis and said 80% of the questions, frankly, were in the manual, RTFM. I think we all heard that before. And read further in the manual. And but yes, but you really, and this is what RAG agents are perfect for. RAG agents can take large volumes of information and through natural language ask questions, and it can produce an answer basically as if you have an expert that's read all 100 manuals on your products. That solved so many of our support problems. But again, it was an expert who understood their domain, who was familiar enough with the technology to be dangerous, to call in the ML team to do something with them to get something started. So I'm not sure ML's there quite yet to help us start these things, but again, I still look to my domain experts and the people that understand their business.
All right, so the age-old issue, Henry Ford saying if I had asked all the customers what they wanted, right, they'd be like, give me a horse that goes faster and poops less. Right, so I guess AI is probably going to keep doing that, right? And humans are going to be the ones who are going to come up with the car, as of now.
Definitely as of now. We've heard talks about AGI some point becoming reality. Now, having been in the domain long enough, I think it's way further out than many would have you believe. We're just predicting the next token these days, right? That's how further along we are in it. There is no conscience to it. But if and when it does reach that stage, yes, then it will question why you're writing certain line of code and how you could get better at the solution you're trying to build, or maybe come up with a better idea than you could today. But again, where we stand today, it's a useful tool just like any others. You mentioned internet as being something that we've gotten used to over time. I often think of electricity too. There's so much of it around us. We don't even pay attention to it every day. AI is going to permeate our lives like that someday. And we'll be just so much used to it. It wouldn't matter that it's right there next to us. It'll make our life better. But AGI probably will have a meaningful change. There'll be another hockey stick impact in terms of what we can achieve. And I'm looking forward to it. It's just not next year.
I think a good gut check on these things sometimes is like to look at the actual metrics of LLM. Like I too think that AGI talk is like beyond 5 years minimum, probably much longer, but definitely not happening in 5 years. And I mean, I shouldn't say definitely because anything can happen, but if you look at the benchmarks, which OpenAI just released an audio to audio model, and it's state of the art. It's the best it's ever been. And at instruction following, it gets like a 40% out of 100 on being able to follow instructions. So these things are improving and improving rapidly, and that's obviously like a harder test, and it's meant to make the AI fail. But I think whenever people are hand waving, oh, we're already at AGI, like, no, I mean, there's a lot of work that still needs to happen. And the difference of 90% to 100% is the hardest to improve beyond. We're still making like greenfield gains in many areas. That extra 10% could be 10 years easily. So
Definitely an exciting area. I mean, one of the things we learned back in early machine learning days, the Netflix challenge, those of you who remember back the Netflix challenge, and the teams that actually won the Netflix challenge and placed in the top 10, they used ensemble models where they were taking, and in fact, everybody who's teach ML, any model that's basically better than 51% accuracy, if you cohort a bunch of them together, their accuracy can get up into the high 90%. What I'm excited most about is if you look at agents. Right now, my team is doing work with agents. Each agent has access to different LLMs. You give them a task, they go back and forth and talk. And this goes back to Marvin Minsky's Society of the Mind, where he postulated that intelligence was really having little sub-agents in your head and in your intelligence actually working together, talking together. Each one was kind of but together they would form together intelligence. I'm super excited when I see what's happening with agents. We're running experiments with agents that have different skills, they have access to different LLMs, and we give them a task, they plan, they execute, they do reinforcement learning so the task gets better the next time they're presented with it. It is interesting to see how this field, it's not going to be LLMs, I think it's going to be agents, and I think it's actually going to be a society of agents who are there. We're using agents for programming right now, where we have multiple agents who are writing code, testing your code, while looking at the code that another agent actually wrote, and they're working together to actually prove out the code, as opposed to just generating code. Someone's actually another agent's testing it and pushing it back, while another one's generating documentation. I think that's going to be very interesting in the next 5 years to see what happens in that space. It's not going to be a single LLM, but maybe all of the LLMs, and maybe even small SMLs that we build with our own data. So that makes me excited.
And just to put some weight behind that, I think you're absolutely right. When you have multiple, it's a very understated paper that OpenAI released, but they basically found that when they queried an AI model, even just a single model, and they asked it just a question, right? And they're like, okay, if the question is right or wrong, when the model responded with the exact same answer more often, that actually showed like a straight line graph upwards in terms of accuracy. So the more often a model would respond a certain way, the more likely it was to be correct, basically. So I think that type of like swarm theory is a huge part of improving AI.
Well, thank you. We've covered, I guess, some ground, especially around productivity. I think more so around productivity. I have a bunch more questions, but we wanted to give a chance to the audience to ask a few questions. But before doing that, if you have any conclusion or thoughts in conclusion about things that we've talked about, I usually like to ask AI experts one question that I have as also maybe part of your concluding remarks, if you want to touch on that, which is there are lots of doomsday scary stories, right? People are putting out there, some very, very long time ML AI experts saying that the world's going to flip very quickly and humans are going to be redundant that's maybe the best case scenario, right? So if you have an opinion on any of that, I'd be curious about, as well as, concluding remarks, and then we'll let the audience ask them questions.
Yeah, I could go first. So in terms of the applications of AI, I would say no matter your role, discipline, no matter the stage of career you're in, you'll find opportunities where you could make a meaningful difference in your current role, current job, a new skill set you're trying to build, a startup you're going after. And again, not everyone has to build frontier models. Focusing your energy towards solving for a meaningful customer problem is the right way to go about it. And then looking at the current available technology, how you could differentiate in a sustainable manner, not just another version of an existing app or a modified chatbot, but rather something that alleviates a customer pain point, leads to a solution that meaningfully changes customers' life. And this applies to both B2C and B2B both. On the question of possibility of a doomsday scenario, I'm an optimist, glass half full. I don't worry about that. Having said that, I would say this, that technology doesn't differentiate. It is equally enabling bad actors today. I mean, I don't know if you get phishing texts, fraudulent messages, but look at how precise they are these days, right? So yes, technology has to evolve to catch up to what bad actors could do with AI, but again, it's on us humans. I don't think technology necessarily is going to lead to that, and I'm a firm believer that there are more good in the society than bad, so we'll come out of it, we'll find better usage of it. It's just that it takes time to learn and respond to new challenges as they come up with advancement of any technology out there. So that's just my take.
Go ahead.
Good take. I mean, I think on the like aspirational side, like using, or advice side, like using tools and learning them like is key. Making sure that, but in the context of your use case, right? You know, if you're a music editor, then maybe learning Suno is worth your while, which is a new music generation tool. You know, rather than sticking your head in the sand, like you really should be aware of like whatever for your domain is relevant, like those are the tools you should learn and be aware of where they're at in terms of their capabilities, even if you don't end up using them long term, because maybe something else will come along a year later that you will use. In the doomsday AI scenario side of things, I think if you ask me on any given day, my opinion on that will change pretty rapidly. It's kind of a roller coaster. I do lean more towards the optimistic side, where the stuff that we're talking about today is pretty far from what a lot of theoretical stuff is, and in terms of both the reality technically as well as like the practical aspects. And so I think it's really hard to predict. The one thing I do feel pretty strongly about is there used to be, or I mean still it probably is in a lot of circles, this idea of there being this sudden like super intelligence explosion, that there's like one entity, which has always felt kind of silly to me, because humans have never been like, okay, there's just one, you know, like there already are so many LLMs and companies that are competing and countries. You know, if there is a AGI intelligence explosion, it's going to be a situation where there's multiple countries and multiple companies that are developing these type of capabilities, and they'll be in contention with each other. And it's not just going to be, oh, there's like the Borg that takes over and, you know, we all submit to it, right? It's like there isn't a situation, I think, where that actually is practical. So to theorize around it seems a little silly. I think it's much more likely that we enter a scenario, if it does happen, of intelligence explosion where, you know, there's a lot of competing interests, and it's similar to how we have today. It's just that suddenly there's a lot more weight being thrown around in terms of the intelligence level. Because at the end of the day, these are physical boundaries as well. Like we are limited by compute, right? Whether or not that compute can get optimized, like that's a whole other discussion, but there are a lot of computers being run to run the current LLMs. And if you've done the napkin math on what it takes to have human level intelligence, at least similar to a brain, it is petabytes and petabytes of information, so for a single brain. So I think, yeah, I don't worry too much about it day to day.
Yeah, good points, guys. Look, AI is a force enabler. It's an enhancer. Humans have actually built new tools and used those tools to their advantage to build new things. We thought the ATM machine would take away bankers. Guess what? Banks wanted to compete. They moved and opened new branches closer to their customers because people wanted to drive less to get to a bank. You don't have tellers doling out cash. You have talking about loans, different investment vehicles. We thought robotics was going to do away with jobs. No, we have more people in our fulfillment centers today, but we have one-day shipping. That's how we can differentiate. I see AI being used in the very same way. We will figure out how to harness it, how to use it to do better. Customers are going to want more. Companies are going to try to compete to use that AI to displace some of the other competitors with it. I think that's how the dynamic is going to play. Yes, we're going to have to put maybe certain guardrails. Sometimes AI may say drop your database or delete a file or delete your account. We're going to have to put guardrails to make sure it doesn't do something bad. But we will. We'll figure it out. We always have. I mean, this is what we do. We're greedy. We're motivated. Our customers are demanding. We put the two together and we start innovating using whatever tool we can. So I see that's how this will play out when we look back in the later years.
Thank you. So now it's your turn. Guess Andy.
Yeah. So I come from the boring industry of selling sugar, water, and plastic containers. So I come from the boring industry of selling sugar, water, and plastic containers. And one of the problems is we essentially have one IT person for 3 distribution centers. And that is a very common problem, is essentially there are not enough IT people at these old school businesses to incorporate new tools. And when we use the language of AI versus software, AI scares a lot of owners who tend to be, let's say, in their, let's call it 60 plus range. How do we reframe AI from just being like this thing that the bleeding edge fully understands to something that's much more digestible? It was like, this is software that can enable. Do you guys see a big opportunity for all of these boring businesses that need to modernize, that right now are essentially scared of using AI tools, despite like when we used it to do management training, it reduced our warehouse errors by 75%.
Nice.
And then I still couldn't convince my dad to bring in another AI tool, right? So like, even though we see the successes, there's such fear associated with AI. Is the language the problem, and essentially the decision makers on the other side?
Yeah, may all your problems be technical. You know, it is a cultural problem. It is, and I completely get that. And I don't think there's an easy solution for that, other than fear about actually being disrupted. Okay, I do see companies that are actually leveraging AI and disrupting their competitors because they figured out how to use it. I mean, Cursor, came from nowhere with, I think they have 24 people. Okay, 24 people, and it's a multi-billion-dollar valuation, and they're taking over the space. So I guess maybe a sense of fear is what may actually get you past that cultural challenge.
The domain we operate in today, we have a bunch of customers who you would classify as single location dentistries, opto, vet. They have no technical trainings. The adoption curve for AI has been pretty slow in that industry, or any technology for that matter. But if you tie AI to outcomes, then you're able to have the conversation around the applications of it, the benefits of it. A simple example is when you come in and say, we could help you be more effective with your front desk by automating the calls that are coming in. Your phones are ringing, and at the same time, patients are walking in. We could help you handle one of these so you can focus on the other. That differentiates you. That's a conversation they want to have. And that's one way to go about it. Now, I recall early days of cloud when 15 years ago or so, I was traveling to India talking to one of my uncles back there. It's like data on cloud. And it's like, what happens when it rains? So, you have to be mindful that technology moves much more quickly than the awareness of it across all geographies. And tying it to the language they understand, the domain they work in, the outcomes they care about, makes it for an easier conversation.
Go ahead.
I'm curious to hear your perspectives of the moat for the small and medium-sized businesses, because going forward, like, models are all open source. So do we think it's data and distribution and the trust maybe, or something else?
Was the question, what do we feel about remote?
Moat, M-O-A-T, moat. What do you think of the moat
moats.
for the small and medium-sized businesses? Especially those who build around, automating one thing or 2 things or 3 things.
Yeah,
I'm not talking about oracles of the world, but definitely, yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird situation because I do feel like AI is in this weird space because the models are so expensive. That can't be your moat. Obviously, you have to build moats in other areas. And it turns out that those other areas may or may not be super defendable. I do think that like large companies and consolidation do have the advantage right now, and we are kind of seeing it. I don't know, like beyond, I'm interested to know your thoughts on this actually.
So first off, I think small language models combined with your data is your differentiator. I don't see, and it's going to be interesting to see how the large language model space plays out. Given we're running out of data, they all have access to the very same data. They're trying to specialize in certain areas and find their own niche. They're spending billions of dollars when frankly I can run a small language model on a CPU, but I can take my customer data and ask questions about products that you have in your inventory or problems that you have that you've solved for your customers. That to me is a much more interesting. I'm actually pivoting my services to allow one to click an open weights model from Hugging Face or from OpenAI, combine it with their data, and with a click put it into production, and it's just for you. I think that's going to be a very interesting space going forward.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I think that is I think the key is the data. If that's proprietary, no one else has that, right? So if you're using proprietary data and also bringing it to your customers, how they want it, that's the other area. Obviously, just typical software engineering, not even AI. Building in ways that you can get through those hoops, like SOC 2 compliance. That's a pretty big hoop you got to jump through as a company. Most companies die before they hit that point. So, yeah.
I guess, Abhi, you touched on this early on, right? That you're not going after horizontal AI technology. You're in the business of applying it. So how do you think about it?
Yeah. If I could flip the question, I don't think looking for moat is the right outcome here, because I would say even likes of Oracle, if I could say that, or Microsoft for that matter, some of our previous employers here, don't have the moat anymore. You just mentioned Cursor, right? Like, look at where Copilot is. Copilot's trying to chase Cursor now, right? So who has the moat? I think the technology is just enabling every size of organization, every individual out there. It's again going back to the basics of what problem are you trying to solve for, and are you focused enough to be able to drive all your energy towards it? You will find a lot of larger organizations end up squandering their energy on a bunch of projects, and you being focused on that one critical problem, you may have a greater chance of success. If you were to just look at some of the companies recently, Sierra, for example, in customer support, raised what, like a 10 billion valuation now, right? Ramp, another one. So companies are in like not just unicorns anymore, like 10 billion plus valuation in a very short amount of time, most of them leveraging AI in a domain where they're competing neck and neck with established players. It just wasn't possible. So technology is enabling that too. It's bringing down moats that SMBs and other startups should come in and take advantage of.
Thank you.
Others? Jignesh?
Hi. Thanks for sharing a lot of positives of using AI in engineering. My question is regarding limitations and sometimes risks of using heavily AI in engineering. For example, I come from telecoms background. We are a small company, and like everybody, we jumped on AI because it brings efficiency, production, and so on. But soon we found out that as soon as we started using it for domain kind of problem or larger context problem, it hallucinated and it goes all over the place. And we found out that we can't believe what it gives immediately. So what are some of the guardrails or audits you keep on the output of AI and bringing that into your engineering, making sure that it gives what it's supposed to give and we can't just blindly believe what it comes out of?
I mean, the key is you cannot trust what the AI codes for you. It has to be human reviewed. That's like a hard, fast rule. Like anybody who's deploying code just that AI wrote is like, I don't know, in my mind, that's like a fireable offense. Like yeah, I mean, or a very stern talking at the very least. Like, I think that's actually probably the single most important thing you can train people on is that they cannot trust it and that they need to review everything very carefully. I tell this because it's like a perfect example. I was working on some database code I was going to basically delete a tool to delete organizations from our database. And the AI, without being prompted to, came up with a flag for, oh, like this is a dry run mode, so I can run this when it's true and like it won't actually delete anything. But it was missing several of the if statements that would have stopped that from deleting stuff. And of course, as the developer I am, I was reviewing the code. I'm like, wait a second, this is missing from this place. And sure enough, it was. And so I was able to not delete an org from my database, or like half of the org, which is even worse than deleting the entire org, honestly. And it saved me there. But if there isn't that clear expectation in place, then you could run into some very significant issues. So I think that's like has to be drilled into everybody at an org who's using AI for coding, for sure.
I agree completely. I also, just this week alone, I've read 3 papers on how to eliminate hallucination. I think the field is working hard on that, and I think we will have a solution for that in the not too distant future. But that being said, there's no, you have to have a backstop. You have to do a human review. Sure. Are there other questions? Go ahead, Prashant. It's a matter of the information sources that you have and the ability to actually determine if the answer is coming from an information-rich source or a sparse source, which actually could have inferred and actually blurred between two memories or 2 pieces of information. But again, we are seeing some information theoretic solutions coming up to actually screen or filter out hallucinations that look promising.
Yeah, thank you for the engaging discussion. My next question, I have 2 questions. One of the questions is, in your org, how do you see hiring practices changing with AI? And maybe, if I may, I'll shoot the second question as well. Second is around the future of work. I do see a lot of statistics out there which talk about short-term displacements, short-term layoffs. Of course, we are seeing them every day. I can see them being displaced, but in the next 3 to 5 years, what are your thoughts on where will they get displaced to? What kind of roles you see coming up, and what kind of roles getting obsolete?
Yeah, in terms of hiring practices, it's not changed materially. What has changed is, one, if you look at the top of the funnel, there are tools that we use, Ashby, for example, that our company uses, others have Workday and such. They all have some integration of AI to be able to parse through resumes easily so you can effectively find candidates. In the interview processes, because AI is making it easier for candidates to also be able to just generate code. A bit of proctoring is included here and there, monitoring of the code if it's a take-home assignment. Live coding, for that matter, is even more critical in assessment. We do ask for experiences with RAG, MCP, and such, but it's not required today because we think these are a skill set we could train you on. There has to be willingness for it. And then lastly, I would say candidates who do best through these practices today are not necessarily the ones who built it at scale, but those who understand the technology and can speak to it is primarily what it is. Demonstrate some usage. In fact, many of us, while interviewing, are comfortable if you even use a chatbot as an assistant through that. We want to see how you're going to use it at work too. So if it's a live coding round, we are comfortable you playing with it, demonstrating you are effectively able to use it in your day-to-day lives. In terms of impact to jobs and displacement, even if we constrain it down to technology and engineering, it's super hard to predict. As I've said earlier, if you're building the skills, you are even more desirable in the industry now because so many opportunities, it's this shortage of talent, in fact. We have dozen more headcounts that we have opened, and our hiring pace has slowed down again because all it takes in the interview loops now these days. And there's a high demand for talent too with that skill set. So hard for me to predict. Maybe others have a better answer to it. I'm going to say if you're building the right skills and you have experiences, successes under the belt, you're going to be in demand. You're not going to be replaced.
I mean, I would say watch out for Cluely if it matters. Like, it's a weird. Cluely is this company that's been making the rounds where it is essentially a cheat tool while you're in an interview to basically have the AI listening to the conversation, and it will feed you answers as you're in the interview. So I've heard some friends of mine who have had interviews where they were like suspecting something was not quite right, and then they talked to their daughter or whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, that's Cluely. So it's definitely like Somebody please fix hiring. No, no, yeah, hiring's in a weird place because of the AI on both ends of the funnel happening now, and even in an actual interview can happen. And it's weird because I think for programming specifically, like, I don't know that I would want to interview somebody who's not using AI for programming. So I think that those older tools, like, I mean, maybe it's still a good filter for like, oh yeah, this person like knows how to develop not with, without AI, but the most effective people are going to be using the tools. I think I forget. I think it was one of the people at Google or something who was talking about that as well. How they wanted to see that people were using AI for programming in their actual interview process. But it wasn't like their entire interview process. I mean, Google's notoriously got quite the process. So adding that as like one of the things that they're checking for is like makes sense, and it makes sense that they're doing it. But yeah, I don't know what the solution is. And then long-term impact, yeah, there's charts that come out every year that like estimate based on like economics, what are the most rise in jobs and least like most eliminated jobs. And I think it's like at-home care people are the fastest growing industry in terms of job growth, which is a job that pays very, very poorly. I think it's like $34K a year, and nobody wants to do either because it's like not necessarily the most pleasant thing. So yeah, I don't know what the truth is of the matter, but I think development work and that type of stuff is around for a while.
Good points. I do see a change taking place. Give me a developer who's an okay developer that's a heck of a good product manager who can describe a problem. Those that we've seen that have had the most success with these coding tools build elegant prompts describing the application, what it should do, how it should operate. It's fully detailed, they're articulate. They're able to talk about what edge cases it must protect against. It must talk about the kind of experience they want the customer to have, blah, blah, blah. Get a product manager who actually understands coding and can review. I think we are going to see a change in what our developer community looks like. Teams that are actually have discounted PMs and said we don't need them, they've struggled with some of these tools. The amount of output they get out of them is relatively poor because they've not been able to write the prompts and articulate what they want the tool to do. These tools have to be told, they have to be guided, they have to be directed. I do see a shift in actually seeing product managers actually being frontline programmers for very early applications. I see displacement. If somebody is just building a simple website, I can do that with any one of these tools today. So a lot of people have lost their jobs building simple tools. The complex ones, distributed systems with high availability, high reliability, those aren't going away. So I do see some changes and shifts in our organizations and what they look like based on how these tools work and who's the right person to actually get the most out of these tools.
Well,
Yes.
Let me.
Of course. Yes. Well, I mean, look at the, SaaS application. Yes, yes. I mean, look, SaaS applications are going to get disrupted. We have knowledge workers who are actually asking natural language questions to an agent that actually understands all of the tools and is able to talk to other MCP servers to get stuff done on their behalf and talk to their agents. We're using agent-to-agent protocols for agents to coordinate together. And so we've got people who are not writing a line of code. Our CEO, Safra, is asking questions that's talking to NetSuite, which is talking to Fusion, which is talking to an Oracle database to build a graph and a result. Yeah.
So, just one logistical note. So we're going to run out of time here. So we're going to take one more question. But we have the room for a while. The food's going to be there for a while. Drinks are going to be there for a while. And hopefully Roger will be here for a while. Right? So we can get into some of these detailed questions. But let's take maybe one or two more questions from anybody else. Pete has one.
You said Pete?
Hi, my name's P. I'm part of the core Hitech team actually. But outside of the enterprise context, I'd be curious to know how you've used AI tools to enhance your personal lives, whether it be in terms of productivity, time management, and especially accelerating the learning of new skills. That'd be interesting to know.
I love that question because that's a lot of what my book is about, actually. It's called Expert in Everything for a reason. It's a double meaning, too, where AI is an expert in everything, right? You've got multiple models that have different expertise, and then also a lot of these models are general, so they themselves have expertise. But then using AI, you can become an expert in pretty much everything, to an extent. There's still deep expertise value, but people can be a lot wider now than they used to be before pre-AI models. Personally, I think like household stuff, like how to hang things on walls. Like that was actually my first use of ChatGPT. Was we had a new drill and figuring out how to use the drill because the instructions were horrible. That was actually the first time I used ChatGPT, and it worked out. I still have that hanging up there. Other use cases, I mean, like I mentioned Suno Music. Like I like to make AI music just for fun, and use it for like my wedding and stuff like that. What else? Uses like research just in general. Like you can do the curiosity research side where it's like there is literally no, well, I shouldn't say no value, but curiosity fulfillment, like asking questions about like the Roman Empire as like a meme example. That's like one route. Deep research with ChatGPT is pretty interesting. But then also like market analysis type stuff where I'm wondering, like what is the implication of like Trump replacing the head of like the economic forum and like getting a research like done by AI and that, and it giving back like this is what it could mean, this is what it could not mean, like all those things. So I think like having AI as your like kind of tutor slash a research assistant. Okay, one last one. Because I've been working across multiple programming languages, I was curious, like, do I actually know this programming language? So I started using AI. ChatGPT also has a like a student or like a learner mode where you can basically have it generate for you quiz questions, and then you can put in the answer, and then it'll tell you if you got it right or wrong, and then move on to the next question. And so that was super helpful for me making sure I actually understood Python syntax. So yeah, that's just some of them. But
I guess, okay, we'll leave it at that. Last one. Anybody? Yeah. Sudha, you have one? No, then we're going to have two. I want Sudha's question.
Okay, we'll have Sudha up as our last fanatic. Yay. Well, hello, everybody. I'm a huge fan of user experience and experience design, and I'm curious about, in the world of AI, how you guys are thinking about customer or user experiences in your AI design and what that might look like in 10 years.
Go ahead, Raj.
You have to hire UX people.
10 years.
You have to hire UX people. These things are, if you're working with a human, these tools are meant to work with a human. If it's a jarring experience, it has to actually work and be elegant and actually work naturally the way that they work. If you get that wrong, and we actually looked at like the top 10, and just do this yourself. Look at the top 10 popular products that are out there, just in whatever your domain is, and actually ask if there's anything differentiating them between other competitors, because they might be using the same back LLM. They got the user experience right.
Sudha, go ahead.
Thank you. This is interesting I'm a technologist, I'm an engineer, and I grew up learning engineering over a long period of time. And of course, Roger talked about device driver programming using, and that's very interesting that I'll chat with you a little bit more. But I think that the fundamental question is that creating true engineers just by using tools is in my humble opinion, is not possible. I'll give you from my personal experience. I was first, my undergraduate was from a third world country. We started learning with as engineers, slide rules. I don't know how many of you have seen that one in museums, in slide rules. So the emphasis at that time was that, oh, the calculators had started appearing, but the professor said, hey, they are expensive. You better learn how to use slide rules. and that is important. And but at the same time, it also built sense for you on numbers really well. Those beyond the calculators. And then, you know, later on when I worked as a computer architect in the late 90s, I have co-invented the fastest floating point units. But those things, actually the slide rules were the ones that actually made the foundation for that. You cannot replace. You may be talking about all these fancy hardware that is doing the AI right now. And Roger mentioned about the distributed programming. It's the fundamental computer architecture aspects of it. That, I don't see a way to get that one if you don't train the people along that way. How do you do that? I think that is the balance. That is the biggest challenge that I would say we have right now as people managing organizations.
Does every engineer have to be trained that way, you think?
Okay, you can have a large number of, I don't want to use a word, but I will use it, fluffy engineers. They are needed. But, you know, if you want to really fundamentally make a change, you have to have them trained. You have to bring such engineers. How do you do that? That's a challenge for the organizations.
I don't think that's going to go away.
I know that one, but then in organizationally, how do you instill that? How do you instill that practice? Hey, you have to have these people who have to have the fundamental skills.
Again, I don't think that's going away. I mean, if you look at
Yeah.
models, if you look at where these models were trained, they were trained on code that somebody else wrote. So they're only as good as the legacy code. If we quit programming and designing, then all of a sudden these things are going to be stuck in the 2024 design and implementation.
Yep. Exactly.
But that being said, the reality is a lot of code gets copied from online. In fact, someone puts a bug in an online article and it gets propagated the next day. So my point is, and that's all these LLMs are doing for coding. They're actually taking stuff from the legacy. But again, people still have to keep writing, designing, to your point. I don't think that's going away. I think what's going to happen is we're going to accelerate this simple code being written. You're not going to get an LLM to design a distributed system for a database I'm going to run my financial institution on. That's not going to happen.
Yes, I understand that
Okay.
one. What I'm saying is that how do you organizationally instill that principle in the sense that, oh, you have to have the people who have trained appropriately and that go through these steps.
But isn't that what we're doing today? If you run a software business today, you're hiring principal architects, senior architects, you're hiring distributed system skills. That's what you're doing today. But now the expectation is some small tasks can be accelerated. So I don't think things are changing.
But well, I do see the aspect of it. You know, I think people like Sky has talked about. Hey, you have to have this knowledge and you have to have this tools training, and it's I think it'll in the next 10 years you will go through this battle. Organization.
I think what you're getting at, it sounds like, is like, how do you make the non-technically people understand that AI can't just do all of our jobs? Like, how do you internally instill that there is still a need for senior engineers and architects and intermediate software engineers and the whole stack, right? Yeah, I don't know what the answer to that question is.
Yeah.
Show them this panel.
What we have tried with some impact is education and specific examples. You know, when you think about organization like ours, we have technology, of course, and probably easy to educate them on the benefits of having architects, senior engineers supervising any line of code that's going to touch a PCI, compliant data, or HIPAA compliant, or TCPA for that matter. Communication was mentioned earlier. But then there are other disciplines too. And to say, you know what, we could handle an incoming customer call, but that same model can't write code, you have to have the right language, the education there. We're working through that. What doesn't help is a lot of CEOs getting on call and saying 30, 40, 50% of code is being written by AI in their organization. Then you need to come in and justify somehow how that is inaccurate, misleading at times even. Having said that, with the right examples, simpler things like what we are doing and what we can achieve and what's realistic, highly ambitious even, and falls within the limits of what models could do today, helps. And that's what we've been doing. I've written a paper for our own CT members for them to understand how we are applying AI, what level of productivity boost are we projecting out. It's definitely not 60%, right? But then again, if you talk about junior coders, early stage, yes, some of that, and particularly when it comes to test code, could be written by AI, reasonably so today. Are they going to be pushing the boundaries of CAP theorem in distributed computing? I don't think they're there, unless you supervise and guide the models through it.
I think this is a big topic. So we won't get to the bottom of it, unfortunately, but we can take it up individually. By the way, one good news we have is that Sudha is joining us to defluff our engineering as our strategic CTO. So we'll look forward to having his help. Welcome Sudha to the team. And with that, I want to thank all the panelists. I want to thank all of you for showing up. And there's no rush, so there's some more food and more drinks, mingle for a bit. And we do these events roughly once a quarter. So look forward to the next invite. We don't have everything fixed yet, but we will soon. Thank you. Good night.